Hey sports fans, welcome to another exciting edition of Back Pain Solutions. How to help yourself with posture movement therapy and education by Bruce Kodish, PhD, PT.
Woohoo!
So I met Bruce at the Alexander Training Institute a few weeks ago. So Bruce is also an Alexander Technique teacher and a physical therapist and the author of many books, including some books on general semantics, drive yourself sane using the uncommon sense of general semantics. He wrote with his wife Susan, and Dare to Inquire, Sanity and Survival for the 21st Century and Beyond, Bruce Kodish.
Now, is that getting? I see half of my head in the picture. Is that it?
That's the main one. So
that's the main one.
You don't have to. The cam is just an auxiliary. Most people will watch it on the video.
Okay.
The video, so it doesn't matter if we fade in and out a little bit from the cam. That's just for giggles. So, Bruce, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I wanted to be Superman. I remember that was a big deal in the late '50s. But at some point, certainly, even pre-pubescent, I wanted to be a writer. I had fantasies of writing, and I wrote stuff, but mainly I didn't have anything much to say at that point.
Right.
But it was an interesting fantasy. For some reason, it really something appealed to me about that, and lo and behold, now here it is, many years, decades later, and I've written a few books. So,
at what age did you decide you wanted to be a writer?
I may have been 10 years old, something like 10 or 11. There's just something, I don't know what it was. It was just the appeal of creating something out of your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what.
And how did you become a physical therapist?
The physical therapist, I was in Israel for a couple years in the mid-'70s, and I graduated from college with a liberal arts degree, liberal studies. That didn't really it prepared me for very little in terms of concrete making a living type of activity.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do something that I felt was useful and could help people.
Yeah.
So for some reason that appealed to me. I had looked at studied various things, or dabbled in various things like yoga and some martial arts, and the movement and the activity really appealed to me, and the idea of building that on the basis of knowledge and science was an additional thing. So when I came back, it was a little bit of an adjustment. I came back in 1977 and decided to do it, and had to go back to school to get some additional science credits that I hadn't gotten. And I did that for a couple years. Did very well, and then applied to physical therapy schools, and got into a number of places, and decided, I was in Pittsburgh living with my parents, so I decided to go in with the University of Pittsburgh, and was, because of I already had a degree, I was able to get in as a, what would it be, a sophomore, the fourth year of college, or the third year of college. So I basically went into a program that had a bachelor's degree at the end of it, and I did that for, it was a very intensive period and very interesting. And when I graduated, at the time of graduation, I could have gone on for a master's degree, but I was so sick and tired of school at that point that I just decided, well, it doesn't really make any difference in terms of my ability to get a license or to make an income, so I said, forget about it. I've been a physical therapist now this is the 30th year of my career as a physical therapist.
And how many of those years have you been actively working as a physical therapist?
Every year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm still doing that now.
Oh, I didn't
realize. On a
realize
limited basis, I see clients. While I was writing, I just wrote a book, which you know about, the biography of Krzyzewski, and that occupied pretty much all of my time, so I didn't have a lot of time to have much of physical therapy practice, but I did see, I did continue to see people. And Alexander technique, what I call posture movement education, was part of my physical therapy practice.
So how did you find out about the Alexander technique?
Well, I've been interested in the field of general semantics most of my life, and pretty early, I guess it was maybe in high school or first year of college, I read a book called The Art of Awareness by a student of Krzyzewski's, J. Samuel Bois. And it's one of the best books following Krzyzewski's line and carrying it forward. He really dealt with a lot of different methods and a lot of different techniques within a framework of what he called the art of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And so he included things about that people would consider study habits and techniques for learning things that are more, some people consider more intellectual, but a big part of the general semantics or Krzyzewskian viewpoint is that the mind, when we talk about the mind and when we talk about the body,
mm-hmm.
and people take that seriously, they objectify the terminology, and they're really part and parcel of a greater whole in which what we think of as mind and what we think of as body are just inextricably connected.
Right.
And so one of the things he talked about in that book was the Alexander technique. He had studied a little bit of it, and that got me interested, so I did some reading. And beyond a certain point with the Alexander technique, as you know, the reading is not sufficient. You need to have some experience. So I availed myself at some point, mid to late 70s, I'd say. I was able to get some lessons when I was in New York visiting.
With who?
Jane Vogel. Wow, I'm surprised I remember her name. She wasn't very, and I don't know what's become of her. I presume she's still around and teaching. She was also a student of Charlotte Selver, who taught an interesting approach called sensory. It was called sensory awareness, and I had also had some exposure to that through my studies in general semantics, because at the seminars that the Institute of General Semantics used to teach, there was a big segment of the time was devoted to sensory awareness practice. And I remember the first seminar I went to was a 2-week seminar in Vermont, and the teacher of that particular part of the seminar workshop, Charlotte Shouchard-Reed, who later became a friend and mentor of mine, she had noticed, well, a lot of the sensory awareness, I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, with Charlotte Selver's work.
No.
Basically, we could do just a little bit now to
Okay.
demonstrate, and sitting in the chair, and people are listening or watching this can follow along. If you're sitting, just begin to notice the contact that you're making with the chair.